I bought this cabbage for 59 cents a pound, but when I use it in a recipe, it's going to cost me 88 cents a pound. So are you costing your recipes correctly? If you make and sell food, you know every cent counts. And in this video, I'm going to go step by step in showing how to correctly cost a recipe so you can maximize your profits. The first most important step is to list out all your ingredients, right down to your salt. You should even include any cutlery, napkins, any carton, any liner paper. Everything that gets served to your customer needs to be accounted for. This is how I do it in my spreadsheet. There are 150 ingredients you can list out, including a code and a category for each ingredient. This is the ingredients tab, and you can have 150 ingredients listed over here. You would simply go in and type in the ingredient name, say for example, cabbage. And you can also have a category and an item code if you like. The next important step is to convert your weights. So say you've purchased a pound of produce and you're going to use, say, 10 ounces of it in your recipe. First convert the pounds to ounces so you get the cost per ounce. And in my spreadsheet, all of the conversions get done automatically. So you can convert pounds to ounces, tons to pounds, tons to ounces, kilograms to milligrams, and so on. This is the conversion settings tab. And over here, I have entered all of the most common measurement units like pounds, ounces, fluid ounces, gallons, tons, and so on. And in this table, I've entered the conversions, the from to, for example, from pounds to ounces, the multiplication factor is 16 ounces to a pound. Similarly, kilograms to grams, 1,000 grams in the kilogram, and so on. I've entered the most common ones, and you can enter your from and to units as well and enter the multiplication factor to the side. Now that we have all the ingredients listed out and we have the weights converted, we need to figure out the yield percentage. Coming back to the example of the cabbage, this cabbage weighs about 3 pounds, but after I remove the outer leaves and the core, I'm only going to get 2 pounds, which means that my as purchased cost of this cabbage is about 4 cents per ounce, but my edible portion is going to cost me about 6 cents per ounce. The yield percentage is calculated by dividing the edible portion weight by the as purchased weight. So my cabbage yield percentage would be 2 pounds, the edible portion, divided by the as purchased weight, 3 pounds, expressed as a percentage, would give me 67%. The spreadsheet has a built-in yield percentage calculator. You would simply enter the as purchased weight, the edible portion weight, and this would calculate the yield percentage for you. Now let's see how the spreadsheet automatically calculates your cost per unit. First, we enter the purchase price. Say I paid $59 for a box of cabbages, and there were 100 pounds in that box. As you can see, I'm choosing from the automatic drop-down lists. And I want to convert this from pounds to ounces because my recipe calls for ounces. As soon as I choose the pounds to ounces, the spreadsheet automatically calculates for me that there are 1600 ounces. And I'm going to choose the final unit type as ounces over here. If we go to the right, you'll see it has calculated for me that the as purchased price of the cabbage is 0.037 cents per ounce. Now the yield percentage we saw earlier was 67%, and that's what I'm entering. And you will see that it has calculated the edible portion of the cabbage is 1,072 ounces, and the edible portion cost of the cabbage is 0.055 cents per ounce. And all of these figures get automatically displayed next to each ingredient. You get your as purchased cost per unit, you get your yield percentage, your edible portion cost per unit, and the unit which is per ounce. You next need to know how many portions your recipe will make. 6, 12, 24, 100, because this way you know how many customers your recipe will serve. Now let's come to the fun part, putting all your ingredients down in your recipe and seeing how much it costs. And this is how I do it in my spreadsheet. Then we come to the recipe tab. You can enter the recipe name over here, the chef's name, the category, I'm calling it main recipe. You can enter a cuisine. You can enter the number of portions this recipe is going to make and the serving size per person if you like. And over here in the description section, you can choose your ingredients from the drop-down list. So we've entered 3 proteins out here, and we're going to enter, or rather choose, cabbage. Let's choose the cabbage that we entered before. Going down. Now let's say I'm going to use 12 ounces of cabbage in this recipe. You can see it has automatically pulled in the unit as ounces, the as purchased cost per unit, the yield percentage, the edible portion cost per unit, and the total cost of 12 ounces of cabbage. And it's also giving you the cost percentage that this cost has to the total recipe. Seeing the cost percentage of each ingredient in relation to the total cost of the recipe is very useful, because you can see which one of your ingredients is taking up the maximum amount of the cost percentage, and you can look at ways to maybe minimize the cost of that particular ingredient. Once you have the cost for your whole recipe and the cost per portion, you can now determine a good selling price for your recipe so that you can maximize your profits. Now that we have the cost of the recipe and the cost per portion, you can come to a gross selling price that you think would maximize your profits. Let's say you're going to price this at $5 per portion. Then you'll see that the food cost percentage is 16%. Your gross profit is going to be $4, and your gross profit percentage is 84%. Next to the calculations is the recipe card, and you can enter all the steps of each recipe. And if you would like to print it out and hide the costing portion of the recipe, simply click on this button. All of the costs get hidden, and you can print it out to hand to the chef. And just like your main recipes, you can also have sub-recipes, and these are very useful for, say, a special spice mix or a special sauce that you'll be using over and over again in your main recipes. And you can include a sub-recipe as an ingredient in the ingredients list, and the spreadsheet will automatically pull it in when you have to include it in a main recipe, and this way you don't have to repeat all of the ingredients or steps again. There is also a sub-recipe tab, and this works similar to the main recipes. You would simply choose any of the ingredients and enter the quantity, and everything else gets automatically pulled in, and you get the cost of this recipe and the cost per unit. And to save time, you could enter the sub-recipes into the ingredient list. For example, I've called this sub-recipe 1, and over here under the purchase price, you would enter the cost of making the sub-recipe and the quantity you've made, and this would automatically be shown over here as the cost per unit of making the sub-recipe. So if you were to go to a main recipe now and pull in a sub-recipe, you would see all the pricing information is automatically entered. Simply enter the quantity, and you get the cost of this sub-recipe as well. In my spreadsheet, you can have an unlimited number of main recipes and sub-recipes. You can use it both in Excel and Google Sheets. You can have as many main recipes and sub-recipes as you like simply by copying the tabs. Go to copy, create a copy, and that's it. I'm going to be leaving a link to the spreadsheet in the description and comment section below. If you like this video, please do give it a like and subscribe to my channel, and I'll catch you on my next video.